everyone, I want to thank you so much for tuning into my channel. And if you would take a moment to subscribe, and you'll be notified for all of the educational things that I have coming up. Today I have the privilege of sitting here with Campbell Manning, who is a licensed professional counselor and also licensed professional addiction counselor. One thing about Campbell that I had read on the website was when she decided to become a licensed counselor, someone had said, it's going to take you 2 years. You're going to be 52 by the time you get your master's. And she said, well, I'm going to be 52 anyway.
Yeah.
And I just thought about that, and I was like, oh, that is so true. Don't ever let an age stop you from pursuing your dreams, because now she is living out her goals and her dreams, and she didn't let age stop her.
Nope.
It's so important. And so today we are going to be talking about the dangers of alcohol and the effects that it has on your body, and kind of diving into that. And first of all, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this today.
Sure.
I think it's very important, and my goal and my mission is to just kind of have light bulbs pop on in the head of people. That is what it did for me. This information popped on some light bulbs in my head. So talk to us a little bit today about what is going. Okay, so we're not teetotalers. We're not saying that alcohol is bad.
No, I socially drink.
But there is an extent where it can become bad and bring a lot of drama and chaos into many people's lives. So explain to us kind of like, where is that crossing line? What happens? What's going on?
Yeah, that's a big question, but basically there's 3 components that it's like addiction would sit on a stool. So one is I have a genetic predisposition. So somewhere in my family tree, somebody had a problem with alcohol or drugs. And you'd be surprised, it's really hard to find a family that's somewhere that doesn't exist, because we didn't use the word addiction until 15 years or so. We used Granny tippled, Uncle Ed took nerve pills. I mean, we use these words, but no one ever really used the word addiction. So when I talk to people, like, oh yeah, no one. And then as I go through their history, they're like, I'm like, yeah, actually you did. So that, then there's access to, there's access to every drug in America in every middle school, so is everywhere. You can't even go to a movie theater without it. So that's done. And then the third thing that really does turn the addiction into addiction is I am using my substance, drinking in this case, to cope with a problem. And it's, that's not like, if I went home tonight, I'm like, whew, long day, I really need a beer. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you're like, I need a beer. I cannot get through another minute without the relief that's going to come from the GABA and the alcohol that will calm me down. So that need to cope. And we talk to people all day long, and if you ask me when was the first time I had a beer, I don't know. Sometime in August 1975, I went to the University of Virginia. I know darn well there was beer. Couldn't tell you anything. But if you ask someone who's got an addiction problem, they look up to the left or to the right. It's called euphoric recall, because they get a little grin. And they tell a story like, man, I was behind the bleachers at Greenville High, and John brought a 12-pack of Schlitz. I had on my green shorts. We passed that beer around, and I finally felt, that word finally, those words are in every story. Like other people, comfortable in my own skin, less anxious, happy, normal. That sets up a preoccupation to feel like that again. That is the basis for how it really gets going. If you use anything for long enough, if you really abuse it for long enough, you will become addicted just because of the way the brain's going to work. But we're talking about early onset problematic drinking or alcohol or drug use is that euphoric recall.
So is this, because I think people get confused with this hitting serotonin, hitting dopamine. And isn't it true that it's hitting the dopamine and that's what keeps them coming back for more?
Yeah, well, actually what happens is, yes, in a nutshell, your answer is concise. But what happens is your pleasure pathway gets hijacked because of what goes on in the brain chemically. So you become more and more dependent on the dopamine, and you don't have enough serotonin. So first, let me start by saying every human is hardwired to get pleasure chemicals. That's how God made us, okay? Above this line, there's not really a line, but our dopamine, and dopamine is associated with desire, okay? And then there's endorphins, which is associated with pain, okay? Normally, before any alcohol or drugs are involved, we get dopamine, I get it, from a new dress. If someone says, do you want to get a pizza for lunch? And if I get to go see one of my kids. So that's desire, okay? Normally endorphins come from exercise. You hear like runner's high, and from laughing, so that our organs don't bump up on each other. There are doctors out there judge that sentence, but we do get endorphins from laughing. Below the line are serotonin and oxytocin. These are pride and connection. Okay, there's a line because these are short term. They don't last very long. Like one new dress does not fill my happiness for more than a day or so. So I have to go buy another new dress. So these are short term, therefore they can become addictive. These are long term and you can't go get them. I can't say, man, I'm gonna do a really good job in this video and I'm not gonna get it, even if I do, I'm not gonna get a hit of serotonin when it's done. I can get serotonin from at the end of a year or two of doing this job. I'm like, you had a lot of good clients, you had some success. Like, good job. So it's long term. So what happens with addiction is, let me draw another thing for a second, because this is really hugely visually important to understand how we go from normal use, let's just keep it on alcohol, normal, have a couple glasses of wine, to I'm an alcoholic. And somewhere in the middle, everything works in a continuum now. So nothing is down here and I'm an alcoholic is up here. But in here, we definitely we get on the slippery slope without awareness. So I'm a great counselor, but I can't draw very well. This is the brain, okay? So dopamine, we've talked about, is a pleasure chemical that comes from desire. And let's pretend that our brain makes 3 dopamine a day. It doesn't, it makes a lot more, but it's a short video, small board. And let's stick with alcohol, which comes with a chemical of GABA. Okay, GABA is our calm down chemical. Our brain makes this naturally. That's what allows us to drive on the highway and not freak out that someone's going 92 miles past you, 7 inches. You still keep your hands on the wheel. So it's what allows us to live in this world, frankly, of anxiety. And let's pretend that GABA is shaped like that. The brain is tons and tons of chemicals. They all are uniquely shaped. But for every chemical made, there has to be a neuroreceptor or a house for the chemicals to go to. So for our example, we have 3 dopamine and we have 3 GABA. Okay? They're made, they go into their home. It's kind of like that toy kids have when they're little, where you put the round ball into the round thing and the block into the square thing and the cross into cross. It's just like that. Just like that. If that happens like it's supposed to, this is called homeostasis, which is just equality. This is how the brain wants to be. When we start to bring in, and depending upon our age, when we start to bring in alcohol, it's a different brain process, because when we bring in when we bring in alcohol, and I'm not talking like a beer every now and then. I'm talking if you habitually drink 3-4 glasses of wine, or more problematically, your brain is bringing in a lot more dopamine from the chemical, from the beer, okay, or the alcohol. If you're an adolescent, every time you think about using and when you do, you get dopamine. Adults only get dopamine when they think about it, okay? That's why I get much more dopamine when I order the dress than when it arrives. Makes sense. And we're talking about alcohol, so we're going to get a boatload more GABA, okay? So the brain says, ooh, snap, problem, math problem. So what it does as we slide into problematic drinking is it stops making these chemicals because it has too many and it doesn't have enough houses. And then it does the neuroplastic bonus thing, which is great if you've been in a car accident and need to learn how to walk again, but not great if you have a problem with alcohol or drugs, because the brain creates the neuroreceptors for the extra chemicals to go into. So this is why addiction is a disease, because we are organically altering an organ, the brain. That's the definition of disease. So that's all swell, as long as you're bringing in the alcohol and they're going to their homes. It's all good. But if you don't drink, if you're trying not to drink, or you can't drink, then all of these extra ones are going to be clamoring. We call these hungry monster mouths, and they say things to make you want to drink, because This is so complicated. This hot mess lives in the survival part of the brain. The survival part of the brain only knows we need to breathe to live, doesn't know we breathe air, if we're in water to hold our breath. It doesn't know anything. So these then now live in the survival part of the brain. So our brains actually think we need to drink to live. And where it lives in our thoughts is it makes sense. It's like, man, I wasn't gonna drink, but man, it is hot out. It'll be all right to have a beer or two. Man, I wasn't gonna drink, but my boss just drove me insane today and I'm just gonna have a couple beers. And that's all fine unless you have a problem, because they can't stop at a couple beers. And so this is how alcoholism gets its fuel. If we go back to my dopamine and endorphin, serotonin and oxytocin thing, this is important. As we drink problematically, we start to lie. We are unreliable. We may not be doing a great job at work. We may be forgetting things. We may be spending money we're not supposed to be spending. We're going to be cut off from friends that don't drink as much. This steals serotonin and it steals oxytocin so that they go down. I mean, by the time someone walks in here, a lot of them don't have any left. They don't feel good about themselves on any level. But as addiction steals this, it forces us to go up here. And these are addictive behaviors. Dopamine comes with alcohol, drugs, shopping, gambling, porn, overeating. All those addictions are driven by dopamine. And endorphins are addictions that come from eating disorders, from over-exercising, starving ourselves, self-harming. That whole epic that went on like 10 years ago and still going. That's all because you get addicted to the endorphins, because you have to have pleasure chemicals. So if these are not being made or held into the brain long enough, every one of us will go up here and find a really bad way to get our needs met, because like at the beginning, we said, God hardwired us to have pleasure chemicals. And this is why people get caught up in this, is they still feel okay. They still feel okay about themselves because they're getting them. They don't recognize that they're having to get them every dang day.
Can you tell us some signs of a true alcoholic? Like things that a loved one who is concerned could kind of checklist?
Well, like I sort of alluded to earlier, they're going to start lying. They're going to hide their drinking. They're not going to care that it's a problem for you at all. Even if you're like, dude, like seriously, like you slept through dinner last night. They're going to be like, oh, okay, well, I won't do that again. But they will, because the survival part of the brain is going to convince them to do it again. Unreliability, hiding, lying, not showing up for things. Also sort of like, you just start to realize I'm being gaslit, which is like, they're saying things like alcoholism, all addiction is shame driven. Okay, so they can't stand that shame, so they turn it into the victim. I become the victim in every scenario possible, which theoretically mitigates my shame. It doesn't really. It's a shame shield. They don't work. But you'll realize, like, I'm just like, honey, I wish you wouldn't drink. Well, I wouldn't drink, but you made lasagna for dinner, and you know I hate lasagna. And you're like, what does that have to do with the price of eggs in Alabama? Nothing. But they flip it. And I think that's the biggest thing, is you're just like, what is going on? Why are we even talking about what we're talking about now, when I simply made a very simple statement, which is, hey, do you mind not having that fourth glass of wine? The relationships get dinged so quickly, and you just get left with this, I feel lonely, I feel cut off. Like, what are you doing? If you would rather have 4 glasses of wine at dinner and become a little slurry or not make sense or forget what we're talking about, or frankly just say, that was a nice dinner, I'm going into my den, I'm having yet another scotch. Then you're like, okay, well, I'll do the dishes. And you're like, so it starts to erode your relationship, but they can't stop drinking to see that or care about it. We talked about the survival part of the brain. That's this little tiny brain that sits at the top of our spinal column. It's called the old brain, or the reptilian brain as well. Snakes have this, okay? I've never met a smart or kind snake at all. Then on top of that, we have the limbic brain. And this is the brain I call for things with big eyes: people, horses, elephants, dogs. This is where all meaning is made, where like emotions come from, where you just meet someone sometimes in a crowd, you're like, I like them. That's a limbic connection, okay? And then for humans, we have the frontal lobe, and that sits on top, and this is where all executive thinking is housed. The hot mess I drew earlier lives down here, and it only knows I need to drink to live. and it overrides the limbic brain, which is, I'm really hurting my wife's feelings. Like, I can tell, like, she really wishes I would not have this scotch and water. And it overrides the frontal lobe, which is, I'm going to be hungover tomorrow. I'm going to do a crap job at work. I don't have the money for this. I have a secret credit card that my wife doesn't know about because I'm buying all my alcohol on the sly. It overrides these things. And so we, as the parents or the spouses of alcoholics are like, just stop. And we're livid that they can't. But they just can't. And that's why people come see us and go to treatment.
Absolutely. And that's why I really wanted people to know, first of all, what are the signs? Because it is progressive.
Ooh, yeah.
And it will get worse, which is what you have told me before is really why it's defined as a disease. Diseases get worse. Mm-hmm. And so the time to step in is now.
Time to step in is the minute you think, I don't like this, or what is going on, or And we don't, because we can justify it. We hope it'll stop. Maybe someone else says, it's not that bad. Like, Mom, like, you're being kind of crazy. Or, honey, you overreact all the time. Like, I think this is just another example of that. So I think there's that is sort of we get poo-pooed. And then we just hope, maybe this will end, because we don't want it to be what it is, because then we have to do something about it, because it's not just going to stop. And most people, like, to be honest, most adults, it's very hard to get them to realize they have a problem, because adults have jobs, they make good money. They own homes that cost a lot of money. They own a car or two or three. They have children who are still speaking to them. They're doing a good enough job at work. No one's quite figured it out yet. And they just say, you're crazy. So those 6 sort of things that would tell us we have a problem. I don't have a DUI. Like, what's your deal, man? Those things, those are hard to accumulate, and they're so easy to deny. We have clients who have 7, 8, 9 DUIs, and they still will come in here like, I do not have a problem. Like, it goes away, it's fine. That's why I say don't pay for a DUI, because you're just getting another one.
Oh, it's truly amazing and sad all at the same time on how this works, how the brain works, how it can be compromised through substance, which is why we do need to be cautious and careful as we go through.
Yeah, because over time, if you drink consistently, it could be you, whether you have those 3 things we talked about at the beginning or not. We see lots of siblings and kids of people with problems, and I usually spend a session or 2 with them like, look, I'm not telling you can never have a beer, or pick up a joint, like, I get it. I remember being 20, 18. But if you do, and you find yourself preoccupied with it more than your peers, like if you're thinking, man, I don't want to go to that party, they're not going to have any alcohol. Or I'm not going to that restaurant because they don't serve alcohol. If you start to think like that, you might want to at least take a moment, get a little handle on it, talk to someone and say, do you think I have a problem? Because that preoccupation is what drives the addiction. That's the problem.
So you have talked to me before about how there are actual stages to alcoholism. So walk us through that, because if I remember correctly, you don't want to get to stage 4.
You don't want to get to 4. You really don't want to get to end stage 3. So stage 1, I don't even know if it should be called a stage, but it's sort of the experimentation stage. Now, some people argue that everyone in the world who's ever had a sip of a beer is in stage 1. I don't really care. Stage 1 means absolutely nothing. Lots of teenagers drink, experiment. I sort of think stage 1 is where I'm beginning to experiment, like, how do I feel after 2 or 3 beers? Does 2 beers do it, or do I need to have 2 beers and then a glass of wine? If we start to manipulate your drinking on the experimenting for how I get my outcome, that's a problem. Stage 2 is life is a party. And it's, I'm drinking, I have a problem, maybe just a little burgeoning problem, but things are going really well. I have more friends, I'm getting more stuff done, depends on if you're taking drugs or drinking. Lots of people get a lot of stuff done when they're using substances. And then stage 3 is now I'm beginning to rack up some negative consequences. I can completely ignore them. Nobody else may notice them. It could be like I'm hungover 3 days a week, or I don't remember telling that story last night, or I certainly don't remember committing to that thing, and now I'm caught and I have to do it. So it's like these things. But usually beginning of stage 3, it's okay. You can still stop drinking in the beginning of stage 3 on your own. As we slide into, so each stage is A and B, 1 or 2, whatever you want to call it. As you slide into end stage 3, now the consequences are really racking up and other people are noticing it, but I'm still not stopping. And stage 3 usually needs some involvement from a professional. As we roll into stage 4, which by the way is the last stage, is now I'm really racking up the consequences. I've gotten DUIs. My kids are saying, please stop drinking. My boss is saying, you smell like alcohol. Like, this is the 3rd time I've noticed it. I'm going to fire you. You're getting big consequences. But you keep going, because there's the next stage, the last end stage 4, which is I only drink because I need to function. So the term functioning alcoholic isn't, man, I see him out all the time and he's always drinking, but he has a great job and everybody loves him and he doesn't seem to have a problem. That's not a functioning alcoholic. That's a guy who drinks. A functioning alcoholic is I can't function unless I drink. I have to get up in the morning or in the middle of the night and have a shot. I have to have a couple of beers before I go to work. I definitely have to have a 1 martini lunch. And I'm really jonesing to leave here at 5 because I have gone about as far as I can without starting to have some withdrawal. I'm anxious, I'm jittery, I'm getting the shakes, I don't feel well, I'm irritable. These are sort of basic beginning, I don't feel well because I need alcohol. Then you're definitely going to need treatment when you get to end stage 4. And beyond that is death. And it's remarkable how many people will drink right through end stage 4.
Well, I had someone tell me the story of how a loved one had gotten to be homeless. And it was through these stages, and the family was offering hope, let them live with them as they lost their home, but then saw that they wouldn't change, they wouldn't go through the steps as they tried to get them help. Now they are having to get them out because they're causing so much chaos and drama in the home.
They just brought the shell game into your house.
Right. Exactly. And so then it ends up like, you don't want the help, we can't help you, then they move on and eventually become homeless. And it didn't start with I didn't realize that it actually started with someone you might know who had a great job, who was actually doing some good things, and then go through this crazy trail of, and now they're homeless. So it's really a reason why we need to step in.
You do, but you need to step in carefully, and we spend lots of hours training people on how to do this, because no one is going to stop anything negative, none of us, until they determine their life is unmanageable. They're not going to save more money because your dad says you need to save more money. They're not going to lose weight because they can't fit into their clothes. These things, no one stops until they determine it. And you can't talk to them, beg them, argue, yell. You can't make them decide it's unmanageable. So you have to sort of step out and let them figure out my life is unmanageable, staying connected if possible, but just not talking about the alcohol. And then build your plan of, okay, when this becomes unmanageable, what can we do to offer support and love to eradicate the disease? But talking about it, yelling, putting up rules. I have so many parents who come in here and like, I'm taking his door off I'm like, so it really is an inside job.
So wrong word, step out, not in.
Right.
But this is why I wanted Campbell to speak with you, because first of all, here at Hope for Families, they offer tools and a lot of education. So not just for the alcoholic.
Oh no, the family is
but
first.
But also, yes.
Family's
and so
first.
When you become educated and you know how to engage or not engage.
Tiptoe through the landmines.
It's just empowering. It's really empowering. So you do counseling online?
We have Zoom sessions, FaceTime sessions, or in person. Most of our people are all over the country, world now. So most of it is Zoom or FaceTime. But we do have in person for local people, but we see the family. So someone either sees the wife and someone sees the husband if the husband's the alcoholic. Someone sees the parents, someone sees the kid if they've got the problem with alcohol or drugs. So that we can get the first part of the party, the spouse or the parents, to really understand everything I drew, so they're not just like stepping into it and making it worse out of love, but we don't know what we're doing, so we need to get educated as to what we're doing. Then if the person does define their life as unmanageable and does want some help, then we completely step in and help them. But we see mostly family members. I would say, I can't make up a percentage, but more family members that we never see the alcoholic than both sides, sadly.
But just like your name says, hope, that is what you offer. And there's nothing better than hope for that person that has felt hopeless.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And for you to, through the education, through tools, to, not just for the, like I'm repeating myself, but I think it's worth repeating, not just for the alcoholic or the drug abuser.
You don't just deal with alcohol. It's a family disease. We become as addicted to the person that we love as they are to their substance. So we do the same things. We start to hide, we search, we lie, we isolate ourselves, we don't go out, we don't go to movies because what if they drink? Like, we do the same thing. So we have to sort of stop that before they can stop.
But to me, it's freedom, because you are setting the person free, really in both aspects. The alcoholic, if they choose to go through the plan,
Yep.
but the person dealing with it, because you're teaching them how to have healthy boundaries,
Yep.
what's going on, what's actually going on.
What will help?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I just want to encourage you to get in touch if this is a situation that is near and dear to you, or if you know someone that is struggling. Let's talk about where they can find you. Okay, how they can find you.
Sure. So we have, unfortunately, way too many places you can find us. It's super confusing. We're working hard to consolidate. Not there yet. So we have a massive YouTube channel called Put the Shovel Down that has over 600 videos that will help family members, whether it's a spouse or a parent, or even the person who might be thinking, maybe I am drinking too much. There's a bunch of videos, so that's free. So go on, you can subscribe to that, get this information, very helpful. Then you can also Google or look up Hope for Families. And so it's HFFRC, Hope for Families Recovery Center. And that's where you can sort of make an appointment with us. But there's YouTube links, like it's all so interconnected and driven by its own machine that other people are managing for us. But Hope for Families and Put the Shovel Down are the two main names.
Get in touch with them if you need to, and I promise you'll be glad that you did.